Hey everyone, tonight we're stepping into a side of medieval life that often went unspoken, the fragile world of the mind. In an age of saints and spirits, when sadness could be called a sickness of the soul, and madness was whispered about as the work of demons or curses, mental health was lived and endured in shadows. Imagine a candlelit monastery where monks scribbled treatments in the margins of their books, an herb woman at dusk gathering valerian and sage for restless minds, or a village chapel where whispered prayers rise against the muffled cries of the afflicted. For some, healing meant baths in warm springs or the calm of Gregorian chant. For others, it meant exile, shame, or the heavy toll of chains. This was a world where melancholy was a black bile within the body, where visions were taken for messages from beyond, and where fear and faith shaped the way people understood suffering of the mind. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see the circle of voices gathered here. Now dim the lights, let the room grow quiet, and together let's drift into the haunting, candlelit silence of how mental health was seen in medieval times. Part 2. Shadows of the Mind, the Weight of Melancholy. Let us begin our journey not in the clamour of a battlefield or the bustle of a market, but in the profound interior quiet of a single human mind. We travel to a time before our modern language of depression, anxiety, or trauma existed. In the medieval world, the landscape of inner suffering was mapped with a different set of coordinates, drawn from ancient philosophy, theology, and the deep, flowing currents of the body itself. And the most pervasive and poetically understood of these afflictions was the quiet, heavy shadow known as melancholy. Imagine a man of learning, a monk, a scholar, or a wealthy merchant, sitting alone in his chamber as dusk falls. The room is cool and filled with the long, soft shadows of late afternoon. A single candle has been lit on his writing desk, its small flame a lonely point of light in the growing gloom. He is not physically ill. He has no fever, no wound, no visible ailment, and yet he is suffering from a profound and heavy sickness of the soul. He feels a weariness that sleep does not cure, a sadness that has no specific cause, a sense of detachment from a world that seems to have lost all its colour and flavour. Joys that once pleased him, the taste of good wine, the beauty of an illuminated manuscript, the warmth of the sun, now feel distant and muted, like memories of someone else's life. His thoughts move slowly, as if wading through mud. A great, invisible weight seems to press down upon his chest, making each breath feel like a conscious effort. How would this man understand his own suffering? He would not see it as a chemical imbalance in his brain. He would understand it through the ancient medical framework inherited from the Greek physician Galen, a system that had dominated Western thought for over 1,000 years. This was the theory of the 4 humours. The body, according to this theory, was a vessel containing 4 essential fluids or humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. A healthy person was one in whom these 4 humours were in perfect balance. Illness, both of the body and the mind, was the result of an imbalance, an excess of one humour over the others. The man in our chamber would believe that his condition was caused by an excess of black bile, or melaskole in the original Greek. This was the humour associated with the element of earth, cold and dry. And so his affliction was not just a feeling, it was a physical substance, a cold, dark and viscous fluid flowing sluggishly through his veins, poisoning his thoughts and chilling his spirit. This black bile was believed to accumulate in the spleen, and from there its dark vapours would rise to the brain, clouding the intellect and producing the profound sadness and lethargy that he felt. The name of his illness was, quite literally, its cause: melancholy. This humoral theory gave his suffering a physical reality, a shape, and a logic. His condition was not just a figment of his imagination, it was as real as a broken bone. And because it was physical, it could, in theory, be treated with physical remedies. A physician might prescribe a change in diet to counteract the cold, dry nature of the black bile. He would be advised to eat warm, moist foods, well-cooked meats, fresh bread, and sweet wine. He would be told to avoid cold, dry foods like old cheese or salted meats. He might be advised to take warm baths, to listen to cheerful music, or to seek out pleasant company, all in an effort to warm and moisten his chilled spirit. Gentle exercise in the fresh air was also recommended, and in more extreme cases, a physician might resort to bleeding or purging, a harsh and often dangerous attempt to physically remove the excess black bile from the body. But the understanding of melancholy was not just medical, it was also deeply intertwined with theology and astrology. The planet Saturn, cold, distant, and slow-moving, was the astrological ruler of melancholy. Those born under its influence, the children of Saturn, were believed to be naturally disposed to this condition. They were often seen as being introspective, studious, and serious, but also prone to deep bouts of sadness and despair. Many of the great thinkers and artists were considered to be Saturnine, their genius and their suffering seen as two sides of the same coin. From a religious perspective, this profound sadness could be seen as something more spiritually perilous. It was sometimes conflated with acedia, one of the 7 deadly sins, often translated as sloth. But acedia was more than simple laziness. It was a kind of spiritual despair, a weariness of the soul that made prayer feel empty, and the duties of religious life seem like an unbearable burden. For a monk suffering from melancholy, this was a terrible crisis of faith. Was his sadness a medical imbalance, or was it a sin, a demonic temptation sent to test his soul? This question would have weighed heavily on him. He would spend long hours in the cold chapel, praying for relief, for a sign of God's favor, confessing his feelings of emptiness and despair to his abbot, fearing that he was failing in his spiritual duties. The line between sickness and sin was blurry, a source of immense anxiety for the sufferer. And so, our melancholic scholar sits in his darkening room, a prisoner of his own internal world. He is caught in a web of complex and overlapping explanations for his pain. Is it his diet? The alignment of the planets at his birth? A spiritual failing? A demonic assault? Or simply the natural disposition of a thoughtful mind? He feels isolated, his suffering invisible to those around him. They might see him as merely quiet or lazy, or perhaps a little too pious. They cannot feel the immense, leaden weight that he carries, the cold, dark humor that has saturated his very being. The candle on his desk sputters, its small flame casting a dancing shadow on the wall. And in that shadow he sees a reflection of his own soul, a dark, formless, and heavy presence from which there seems to be no escape. Let us leave him now, in the quiet solitude of his chamber. Let us feel the profound stillness of his condition, the deep, slow rhythm of his melancholic thoughts. It is a quiet, gentle sadness, a world seen through a veil of grey. There is no sharp panic here, only a deep and pervasive quiet. Let that profound, heavy calm settle over you now. A quiet blanket that stills your own racing thoughts and guides you into a peaceful and untroubled sleep. Madness in the village. Let us move from the quiet interior world of melancholy to the more visible and alarming phenomenon of madness. We find ourselves in a small village, a tight-knit community where everyone knows everyone else's business and where any deviation from the norm is quickly noticed. Here, a strange and unsettling event is unfolding. A woman who has until now been a normal, hard-working wife and mother has begun to behave in a deeply disturbing way. She wanders the muddy tracks of the village at all hours, muttering to herself, her hair unbound, her clothes dishevelled. She laughs for no reason, a high, unnerving sound. At other times, she sits for hours on the steps of the church, weeping inconsolably, unable to say what is wrong. She no longer recognizes her own husband or children, staring at them with a blank, unseeing gaze. This is not the quiet suffering of melancholy. This is a public and frightening spectacle, and it sends ripples of fear and confusion through the village. How do her neighbors understand what has happened to her? They do not have a concept of psychosis or schizophrenia. They see her behavior through the powerful lens of their own worldview, a world saturated with supernatural forces. The first and most common explanation is a spiritual one. The woman's strange behavior is immediately seen as the work of an outside agency. The whispers begin around the village well and over the low garden walls. Has she been cursed? Did she offend a neighbor who then enlisted the help of a local cunning woman to cast a spell on her? Or perhaps she accidentally disturbed a fairy ring or a sacred spring, angering the old pre-Christian spirits of the land. An even more terrifying possibility is that she is suffering from demonic possession. Her wild laughter, her strange pronouncements, her seeming lack of control over her own body, these are all seen as potential signs that a demon has taken up residence within her, speaking through her mouth and controlling her actions. This is a source of immense fear, not just for the woman and her family, but for the entire community. A demon in their midst is a terrifying contamination, a breach in the sacred defenses of their Christian village. Another explanation is that her madness is a form of divine punishment. Has she committed some secret, terrible sin, adultery, blasphemy? Is God now making her madness a public spectacle, a warning to others? This interpretation brings with it a heavy layer of moral judgment. The woman is not just sick, she is a sinner, and her suffering is deserved. There is also the possibility, however, that her state could be a sign of divine favor. The line between madness and holiness could be very thin. Some saints were known for their ecstatic visions, their strange behaviors, their rejection of worldly norms. Could this woman's ravings be a form of prophecy? Is she seeing visions of angels or hearing the voice of God? This is a less common interpretation, but it exists as a possibility, adding another layer of ambiguity to her condition. Amidst these supernatural explanations, there are also more worldly ones. Has she suffered a great shock or grief? Perhaps a child died or her husband was killed, and the sorrow has unhinged her mind. This is an intuitive, compassionate understanding, a recognition that a profound emotional blow can shatter a person's mental state. There might also be a humoral explanation. Her madness could be the result of an excess of yellow bile, the hot and dry humor, leading to a state of mania or frenzy. Or perhaps her melancholy, her excess of black bile, has become so extreme that it has boiled over into this wild, unpredictable behavior. The villagers watch her from a distance, a mixture of fear, pity, and suspicion in their eyes. The children who once played near her door are now told to stay away from the mad woman. Her family is plunged into a state of crisis. They are confused, frightened, and deeply ashamed. Her madness is a stain on their family's reputation. The community is faced with a difficult problem. What is to be done with her? She can no longer perform her duties as a wife and mother. She is a disruption to the quiet order of the village. She is a source of constant, low-level anxiety. Her presence is a stark and frightening reminder of the fragility of the human mind, of the thin veil that separates the sane world from a world of chaos and terror. Let the image of this troubled figure wandering the familiar paths of her village like a stranger settle in your mind. Hear the whispers of her neighbors, the mixture of fear and concern in their voices. This is a world trying to make sense of something that is deeply frightening and incomprehensible. Let the quiet, gentle pity for her plight soothe you. In the safety of your own mind, you are far from this fear and confusion. Allow that sense of security and peace to wash over you, a calm and steadying presence in the night. The language of spirits. In the medieval world, the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual, the inner world of the mind and the outer world of spirits were not clearly defined. They were porous, permeable, and constantly overlapping. For a person in this age, an unusual mental experience, a dream, a vision, a voice heard in solitude, was rarely dismissed as a mere trick of the mind. It was often interpreted as a genuine communication, a message from the vast, unseen world of spirits that lay just beyond the veil of everyday reality. Let us imagine a young nun living a life of quiet devotion within the stone walls of a convent. Her days are a repeating cycle of prayer, work, and silence. One afternoon, while kneeling in the cold, empty chapel, she experiences something extraordinary. The dim light filtering through the high window seems to intensify, to become a brilliant, blinding whiteness. The scent of roses fills the air, though there are no flowers nearby, and in the heart of the light she sees a figure, an angel, or perhaps the Virgin Mary herself, who speaks to her, offering words of comfort and divine instruction. When the vision fades, she is left trembling, overwhelmed with a mixture of terror and ecstatic joy. How does she and how does her community interpret this event? Today, it might be explained as a hallucination, perhaps brought on by fasting, sleep deprivation, and intense religious focus. But in her world, the first and most powerful interpretation is that this was a genuine miracle, a moment when the barrier between heaven and earth was breached, and she was chosen to receive a message from God. This experience sets her apart. She is no longer just a humble nun. She is a visionary, a mystic. Her words are now listened to with a new and profound respect. The divine messages she receives are written down by her confessor and may be sent to the bishop or even to the Pope. She becomes a figure of spiritual authority, her visions seen as a guide for the entire community. Women like Hildegard of Bingen or Julian of Norwich became some of the most influential theological voices of their age, their authority resting entirely on the perceived divine origin of their mystical experiences. But this path is fraught with peril. For every vision that was accepted as divine, there was the terrifying possibility that it was a deception from the devil. Satan and his demons were believed to be masters of disguise, able to appear as angels of light to mimic the voice of God, to produce false visions and sweet scents, all in an effort to lead a pious soul into pride and heresy. And so the young nun's experience would be subjected to intense scrutiny. Her confessor would question her relentlessly. Is she truly humble? Does the content of her visions align with established church doctrine? Does she exhibit the other signs of true holiness, such as a life of extreme piety and self-denial? The process of discerning the spirits, of distinguishing a divine message from a demonic illusion, was one of the most serious and difficult tasks for the church's spiritual leaders. A wrong judgment could lead a whole community into heresy, or condemn a true mystic as a fraud. This language of spirits was not confined to the cloister. A common peasant might have their own, more humble, encounters. A vivid dream in which a deceased parent appears, offering advice or a warning, would be taken as a genuine visitation from the afterlife. The dream was a space where the worlds of the living and the dead could meet. A voice heard on the wind while walking alone in the woods, a fleeting glimpse of a strange, shadowy figure at twilight. These were not easily dismissed. They were signs, portents, communications from the other world. This world was alive with spirits, both good and bad, the souls of the unbaptized dead, the ghosts of tormented sinners, nature spirits from the old pagan beliefs, and the ever-present angels and demons of Christian theology. The mind was the antenna, the receiver through which these spirits made their presence known. This way of understanding the world could bring great comfort. The sense of a loved one's presence in a dream, the feeling of a guardian angel's protection. These beliefs provided solace and guidance in a difficult world. But they could also be a source of profound terror. The fear that the strange voice you hear is a demon tempting you to sin, or that the nightmare you had is a true vision of the torments of hell, could be a source of immense psychological distress. And for those whose minds were already troubled, this worldview could amplify their suffering. The melancholic might interpret his sad thoughts as demonic whispers of despair. The manic might believe his racing, grandiose ideas were divine revelations. The medieval mind was a stage upon which the great cosmic drama of salvation and damnation was played out, and every strange thought, every powerful emotion, every unexplained vision was a potential actor in that drama. Let your mind drift into this enchanted, spirit-haunted world. Imagine a reality where every dream could be a message, where every moment of solitude could become an encounter with the divine or the demonic. It is a world of wonder, but also of deep and pervasive anxiety. Let the quiet, flickering ambiguity of this world soothe you. There is no need to discern the spirits, no need to interpret the signs. There is only the peaceful, quiet darkness of your own room, a safe and silent space, free from the whispers of the unseen world, stigma and fear. In the small, tightly knit communities of the medieval world, reputation was everything. A family's standing, their honor, their very ability to survive, depended on being seen as respectable, hard-working, and pious members of the community. And so when the shadow of mental affliction fell upon a household, it was often met with a desperate, fearful secrecy. The stigma was immense, and the fear of what the neighbors might say was a powerful and silencing force. Let us imagine a family, a farmer, his wife, and their children, living in a typical village. Their eldest son, a young man in his late teens, has begun to change. He was once strong and cheerful, a good worker in the fields, but now a deep melancholy has settled over him. He rarely speaks. He sits for hours staring into the fire, a look of profound, vacant sadness on his face. He refuses to eat. At night, his parents hear him weeping quietly in the darkness. The family is thrown into a state of quiet panic. Their first instinct is not to seek help, but to hide the problem. The shame is overwhelming. What have they done to deserve this? Is their son's condition a sign of some hidden sin in the family, a divine punishment for a past transgression? Will the other villagers see it as a sign of bad blood, a hereditary taint that will make it impossible for their other children to find good marriage partners? The fear of gossip is paralyzing. In a world where everyone knows everything about their neighbors, a secret like this is hard to keep. The mother might make excuses for her son's absence. He is unwell with a fever, she might tell a neighbor, who asks why he is not in the fields. But these excuses can only work for so long. The family's world shrinks. They stop inviting neighbors into their home for fear they will see the son in his withdrawn state. They become more isolated, their anxiety turning inward. The atmosphere in the small, smoky hut becomes thick with unspoken fear and sorrow. The parents watch their son, their hearts breaking, but they feel helpless, trapped by their own shame. The fear is not just of social stigma, it is also a fear of the supernatural. If the neighbors begin to whisper that the son's condition is the result of a curse or demonic influence, the family could become social outcasts. They might be suspected of having brought this evil into the community. In a world where collective survival depends on trust and cooperation, to be ostracized is a kind of death sentence. If the son's condition worsens, if his melancholy gives way to more erratic or violent behavior, the family's attempts at concealment become more desperate. They might be forced to confine him within the hut or in a locked shed or barn. This is not necessarily an act of cruelty, though it seems so to us. It is an act of desperation born of fear. They are trying to protect him from the judgment and potential violence of the community, and to protect the community and their own family from him. They might seek help, but they will do so in secret. The mother might make a clandestine visit to the local herb woman under the cover of darkness to ask for a potion to soothe her son's troubled mind. Or the father might make a secret vow to go on a pilgrimage to a distant shrine if his son is healed, a private bargain made with a saint. The local priest might be consulted, but even this is fraught with difficulty. The priest might be compassionate, offering prayers and spiritual comfort, but he might also be a figure of judgment, interpreting the son's affliction as a sign of sin and prescribing harsh penances for the entire family. This culture of concealment means that for many, mental suffering was an intensely lonely experience. The afflicted person was isolated, cut off from the normal social interactions of the village, and their family became their secret keepers, their guards, their sole caregivers, bearing the immense physical and emotional burden in silence. The weight of this secret could be crushing. The family's resources would be strained, caring for a member who could not contribute to the household's labor. The emotional toll on the parents would be immense, a constant grinding mixture of grief, fear, shame, and a deep, helpless love for their suffering child. Let us leave this family in the quiet prison of their home. See the mother, her face etched with worry, placing a bowl of food before her son, which he will not touch. See the father, his shoulders slumped in defeat after a long day in the fields. Feel the heavy, oppressive silence in the room. This is the hidden reality of mental illness in this age, a private tragedy played out behind the closed doors of countless ordinary homes. Let the profound, sorrowful quiet of this scene bring a sense of peace to your own mind. The pressures of your own world can fade away as you contemplate this silent, hidden burden of the past. The wandering outcast. Not everyone who suffered from a severe mental affliction could be hidden away by their families. Sometimes a family was unable or unwilling to cope with the burden. Sometimes the afflicted person themselves was too restless, too wild to be contained. And so a common figure on the roads and in the towns of the medieval world was the wandering outcast, the madman or woman who had no home, no community, and no place in the ordered world. Let us imagine such a figure. He is a man, perhaps in his middle years, though his weathered face and gaunt frame make him look older. His clothes are a collection of rags, filthy and tattered. His hair and beard are long and matted. His feet are bare, caked with the mud of the road. He walks with a strange, shuffling gait, his eyes fixed on some distant, unseen point. Sometimes he mutters to himself a stream of nonsensical words. At other times he shouts at the sky, his voice raw with a rage or a grief that no one else can understand. This man has become detached from the moorings of society. He is no longer a farmer, a craftsman, a son, or a husband. He is simply the madman. He drifts from village to village, from town to town, a perpetual and unsettling stranger. His existence is a precarious one, lived entirely on the margins. He survives on a mixture of foraging, begging, and the unpredictable charity of others. In one village, the people might be moved by pity. A woman might leave a piece of bread for him on her doorstep. The local priest might offer him a place to sleep for the night in a barn out of the rain. They see him as one of God's fools, an unfortunate soul who is, in his own strange way, closer to God because he is detached from the vanities of the world. His madness is seen as a kind of holy innocence, and to show him kindness is to show kindness to Christ himself. But in the next village, the reaction might be one of fear and hostility. His strange appearance and erratic behavior are seen as threatening. The children throw stones at him. The dogs bark and snap at his heels. The villagers come out of their homes with sticks and pitchforks and drive him from their settlement, shouting curses after him. They see him not as a holy fool, but as a dangerous vagrant, a potential thief, or worse, a man possessed by a demon whose very presence could bring bad luck or spiritual contamination to their community. He never knows which reception he will receive. His life is a constant, lonely journey through a landscape of unpredictable human reactions. He has no one to talk to, no one to care for him. He sleeps in ditches, in abandoned ruins, in the hollow of an old tree. He is subject to the extremes of the weather, the gnawing hunger, the constant threat of violence from those who see him as an easy target. He is a figure of profound ambiguity. In some religious stories and saints' lives, the wandering mad holy man is a revered figure. His nonsensical ravings are interpreted as prophecies. His rejection of worldly comfort is seen as a sign of supreme piety. But in the reality of everyday life, this romantic image was rarely the case. More often, the wandering outcast was simply an object of fear, disgust, and neglect. He is a living symbol of what could happen to a person if they lost their place in the social order. In a world where identity was defined by one's family, one's village, and one's lord, to be without these things was to be a non-person, a piece of human driftwood on the great chaotic sea of the world. Let us watch him as he shuffles down a lonely, muddy track at sunset, a solitary figure against the fading light. He is heading nowhere in particular, his only goal to find some small measure of shelter for the coming night. His world is one of radical isolation, a universe of one. Let the image of this lonely, wandering figure bring a sense of profound stillness to your mind. He is utterly free from the obligations and pressures of society, but it is a terrible and lonely freedom. Let the pity and compassion you feel for him translate into a sense of gratitude for your own connections, for your own place of safety and rest. Allow the silence of his lonely road to quiet the traffic of your own mind, leading you into a state of deep and peaceful repose. Part 2. Monks, Healers, and Remedies. Monastic healing. In the turbulent world of medieval Europe, the monastery was not only a center of prayer and learning, it was also one of the few places where the sick and the suffering could hope to find some form of organized care. For the troubled mind, as for the ailing body, the quiet, ordered world of the cloister offered a unique and powerful form of healing, a blend of medical knowledge, spiritual discipline, and profound peace. Let us step inside the walls of a great Benedictine abbey. Here, alongside the church and the scriptorium, is the infirmary. This is the monastery's hospital, a quiet, clean, and well-ordered space. It is here that sick or elderly monks are cared for, and where, in many monasteries, members of the public could also come seeking treatment. At the heart of the monastic approach to healing was a deep sense of compassion rooted in Christian teachings. Caring for the sick was seen as a sacred duty, a direct service to Christ. The monk in charge of the infirmary, the infirmarian, was expected to be a man of great patience, kindness, and skill. For those suffering from mental afflictions, the monastery offered, first and foremost, a sanctuary. The outside world was chaotic, stressful, and often hostile. The monastery, by contrast, was a world of profound peace and predictability. The life of the patient would be structured by the gentle, unchanging rhythm of the monastic day, the ringing of the bells for the canonical hours, the quiet communal meals, the periods of silent work and prayer. This predictable routine, this sense of order, was itself a powerful medicine for a mind in turmoil. It imposed an external structure on a chaotic internal world. The monks were among the most educated people of their age, and the monastery library was the main repository of ancient medical knowledge. The infirmarian would have access to the works of Hippocrates and Galen, preserved and copied by generations of scribes. He would understand the theory of the four humours and would apply it to his patients. A melancholic patient would be treated with a regimen designed to counteract the cold, dry nature of their black bile. A patient in a state of mania or frenzy, believed to be suffering from an excess of hot, dry, yellow bile, would be treated with cooling foods, calm surroundings, and gentle music. Alongside this classical medical theory, the monks possessed an extensive knowledge of herbal remedies. The monastery would have its own hortus medicus, or medicinal herb garden, laid out in neat, orderly beds. Here, the monks cultivated a wide variety of plants known for their healing properties. We will explore these herbs in more detail later, but the monastic garden was the pharmacy of the medieval world, and its remedies were applied as much to the mind as to the body. But the most powerful medicine the monastery had to offer was a spiritual one. Mental suffering was seen as being inextricably linked to the state of the soul. The patient would be encouraged to pray, to confess their sins, to seek spiritual guidance from a wise and compassionate priest. The very act of unburdening the soul, of speaking one's fears and sorrows to a trusted listener, was a powerful form of therapy. The patient would also be immersed in the sacred sounds of the monastery. The daily chanting of the psalms, the singing of the mass, these were believed to have a profoundly calming and purifying effect on the troubled spirit. The beauty and order of the music was seen as a reflection of the divine harmony of heaven, capable of restoring a similar harmony to the disordered mind. For some, a more permanent solution was sought. A person suffering from chronic melancholy or instability might choose to enter the monastery as a monk or nun themselves. By taking holy vows, they would be surrendering their troubled life to God, finding a permanent home and a sense of purpose within the protective and structured world of the cloister. The monastic approach was not a cure in the modern sense. It was a holistic form of care, treating the body, the mind, and the spirit as an integrated whole. It was a slow, patient, and gentle process based on the principles of order, peace, compassion, and faith. In an age of immense fear and brutality, the monastery was a rare haven, a quiet, lamp-lit space where a suffering mind could perhaps find a measure of healing and a glimmer of hope. Let your mind rest in the deep, ordered peace of the monastery. See the neat rows of herbs in the garden, bathed in the soft light of dusk. Hear the distant, beautiful sound of the monks chanting in the chapel. Feel the profound sense of calm and sanctuary that permeates these ancient stone walls. This is a place of healing, of quiet restoration, allow that sense of profound, structured peace to settle over you, a soothing balm for your own mind as you drift gently into sleep. The Herb Woman's Basket. Let us leave the scholarly world of the monastery and return to the village, to a small, humble hut on its edge. This is the home of the herb woman, the local healer, the keeper of the ancient, practical knowledge of the plants that grow in the surrounding fields and forests. For the common person suffering from a restless mind or a sleepless night, it is not the monastery's Latin texts, but this woman's basket of herbs that offers the most immediate hope of relief. Imagine her in the early morning, just as the mist is beginning to rise from the meadows. She is out in the fields, her back bent, a large woven basket on her arm. She moves slowly, her eyes scanning the ground. She is not just randomly picking plants, she is engaged in a silent, knowledgeable conversation with the landscape. She knows which plants grow in the sun and which prefer the shade. She knows the exact time of year, or even the phase of the moon, when a particular leaf or flower is at its most potent. Her knowledge has not been learned from books. It is an oral tradition passed down from her mother, and from her mother's mother before her, a chain of practical wisdom stretching back into the unwritten past. It is a knowledge that is deeply intertwined with folklore, with magic, and with a profound intuitive understanding of the natural world. Let us look into her basket. It is a miniature, fragrant pharmacy. Here is a large bunch of valerian, its feathery leaves still damp with dew. She has dug up its gnarled, pungent root, which is known for its powerful sedative properties. A tea made from dried valerian root is one of her strongest remedies for anxiety, for restlessness, and for the kind of deep, troubled sleeplessness that can torment a suffering mind. Next to it there is a bundle of St. John's wort, its small, yellow, star-like flowers just beginning to open. She knows that a tincture made from these flowers, steeped in oil or wine, can help to lift the spirits, to drive away the black dog of melancholy. She may not understand the chemistry, but she has seen its effects. The plant itself is surrounded by holy associations. Its name links it to John the Baptist, and it was believed to have protective powers against evil spirits. There is also sage, its soft grey-green leaves giving off a sharp, clean scent. Sage was a cure-all used for everything from fevers to digestive complaints, but it was also believed to clear the head, to improve the memory, and to soothe a troubled mind. A sprig of sage might be placed under the pillow of a person suffering from nightmares. And here is rosemary, its needle-like leaves intensely aromatic. Rosemary for remembrance, an old saying goes. It was believed to strengthen the mind, to ward off evil dreams, and to bring a sense of comfort and peace. And chamomile, its small daisy-like flowers releasing a sweet, apple-like scent. A warm cup of chamomile tea is a gentle, calming remedy, given to fussy children and to adults whose minds are racing with worry. The herb woman returns to her hut, and her work continues. She will carefully wash and prepare the plants. Some will be tied in bunches and hung from the rafters to dry. Others will be crushed with a mortar and pestle to be made into poultices or salves. Some will be steeped in hot water to make infusions, or in wine or oil to make tinctures. When a troubled villager comes to her for help, her approach is holistic. She will listen to their story, not just to their physical symptoms, but to their fears, their sorrows, their dreams. She will offer a remedy from her basket, but she will also offer words of comfort, a reassuring presence, and perhaps a charm or a prayer to be said as the remedy is taken. She understands that healing the mind is as much about soothing the spirit as it is about treating the body. Her practice exists in a grey area between medicine, folklore, and religion. The village priest might view her with suspicion, seeing her charms and her ancient plant lore as a form of pagan superstition. And yet, when the priest's own remedies of prayer and penance fail, he might quietly suggest that a suffering parishioner pay a visit to the woman on the edge of the village. The herb woman's basket is a symbol of a deep, ancient, and profoundly practical wisdom. It is a testament to a world where healing was not found in a laboratory, but in the green, living world just outside the door. It is a reminder that for millennia, humanity has turned to the quiet power of plants to soothe its anxieties, to calm its fears, and to find a measure of peace in a troubled world. Let the gentle, earthy scents from her basket fill your mind. Imagine the calming aroma of chamomile, the clean scent of sage, the comforting fragrance of rosemary. Let the image of her, moving quietly through the morning mist, a figure of ancient, gentle wisdom, bring a sense of profound and natural peace to you. There is a deep, slow healing in the earth itself. Let that quiet, natural power soothe you now. Music and chant. In the quiet, echoing spaces of the medieval world, sound was a powerful force. In an age with little ambient noise, the human voice and the music it could create had a profound and direct impact on the listener's emotional and spiritual state. And for the troubled soul, there was no sound more potent, more therapeutic than the sacred music of the church. Let us return to the stone chapel of the monastery. It is late afternoon, the time for vespers, the evening prayer. The monks are in their choir stalls, their faces illuminated by the long slanting rays of the setting sun filtering through the high windows. The air is still and cool. And then the music begins. It is a Gregorian chant, the ancient, traditional music of the Western Church. There is no organ, no complex harmony. It is a single, unaccompanied melodic line, a monophony, sung in unison by the monks. The sound is pure, otherworldly, and deeply calming. The rhythm of the chant is not the driving metrical rhythm of secular music. It is a free, flowing rhythm that follows the natural accents of the Latin text. The melody rises and falls in gentle, undulating waves without sharp angles or sudden changes. It is a sound that seems to mimic the rhythm of calm, even breathing. It is designed not to excite the passions, but to quiet them, to create a state of peaceful, contemplative stillness. The monks believed that this music was divinely inspired. Legend told that Pope Gregory the Great himself had received the melodies from the Holy Spirit in the form of a dove that whispered them into his ear. To sing the chant was to participate in the music of the angels, to bring a small piece of the perfect, harmonious order of heaven down to a disordered earth. For a person suffering from a mental affliction, from the agitation of mania, the despair of melancholy, or the terror of a tormented conscience, to be immersed in this sound was a powerful form of therapy. The very structure of the music was a medicine for the soul. Imagine a man afflicted with a restless, racing mind, his thoughts chaotic and uncontrolled. As he listens to the chant, the music's slow, ordered and predictable progression provides an external structure for his internal chaos. The simple, uncluttered melody calms the frantic noise in his head. The lack of a driving beat soothes his agitated state. The sheer beauty of the sound can break through the walls of his suffering, offering a moment of pure, transcendent peace. For the melancholic, lost in a fog of sadness and apathy, the chant could be a gentle, supportive presence. It did not demand an emotional response, it simply was. It washed over him, its serene and objective beauty, a quiet reminder of a reality beyond his own inner world of pain. The communal act of singing, of joining his own voice, however weak, to the voices of his brothers, was a way of reconnecting with the human community, a gentle pulling out from the isolation of his own despair. The Church Fathers wrote extensively about the power of music. They understood that different kinds of music could produce different emotional states. They warned against the dangers of secular music, with its wild rhythms and passionate melodies, which they believed could inflame the lusts and lead the soul into sin. Sacred music, by contrast, was designed to elevate the soul, to turn the mind towards God, and to instill a sense of deep, spiritual peace. This belief in the therapeutic power of sound was not confined to the monastery. In the Bible, the story of David playing his harp to soothe the troubled mind of King Saul was a well-known and powerful example. A wealthy lord suffering from melancholy might hire a minstrel to play soft, gentle tunes on a harp or a lute in his chamber, a secular echo of the sacred therapy of the chant. Let the sound of the Gregorian chant fill your own mind now. Hear the pure, interwoven voices, the gentle, wave-like rise and fall of the melody. Let the sound wash over you, clearing away the clutter and the noise of your day. It is a sound of perfect order, of deep calm, and of a peace that seems to come from another, more serene world. You do not need to understand the Latin words. The music itself is the message. It is a message of harmony, of stillness, and of profound rest. Allow it to carry you gently into sleep. Segment 9. Baths and Waters. In the cold, damp, and often dirty world of the Middle Ages, the simple act of bathing was not just about hygiene. It was a ritual, a luxury, and for the troubled mind, a form of medicine. The therapeutic power of water, both hot and cold, was a legacy of the ancient Roman world, a piece of classical medical wisdom that survived through the darkest centuries. Let us travel to a place where this ancient healing tradition was kept alive. We might find ourselves at a natural hot spring, a place where geothermally heated water, rich in minerals, bubbles up from the earth. These places were often seen as sacred, magical spots long before the Romans arrived. The Romans, with their love of bathing, built magnificent bath complexes around them, and though the grand Roman structures may now be in ruins, the springs themselves continue to flow, and people continue to come to them seeking healing. A monastery might be established near such a spring, the monks taking on the role of custodians of the healing waters. Or a town might grow up around it, its primary industry being the care of the sick and the weary who made the long journey to seek a cure. Imagine a man suffering from a profound melancholy, that cold, dry affliction of the soul. He has been advised by a physician or perhaps by his local priest to make a pilgrimage to one of these healing springs. After a long and arduous journey, he arrives. The air is thick with the smell of sulfur and other minerals, the scent of the earth's own medicine. He is guided to the baths. These are not private individual tubs. They are large communal pools, often housed in simple wooden buildings, where men and women, usually separated, would bathe together. He lowers his body into the naturally hot, silky water. The effect is immediate and profound. The deep, penetrating warmth seeps into his cold, aching limbs, a direct physical antidote to the coldness of his humoral imbalance. The heat is believed to open the pores, to thin the thick, sluggish black bile, and to allow the body to sweat out the excess, purifying itself from within. But the cure is not just physical. It is a deeply relaxing, almost meditative experience. He soaks in the warm water, the steam rising around him, muffling the outside world. The constant, gentle sound of the flowing water is a soothing lullaby. For the first time in months, the tension in his body begins to release. The great, invisible weight on his chest feels a little lighter. The regimen might involve more than just soaking. He might be instructed to drink the mineral-rich water, despite its often unpleasant taste, in an effort to rebalance his internal humours. He would spend several days or even weeks at the spa, his life reduced to a simple, healing rhythm of bathing, resting, and gentle exercise. This water cure was not just for melancholy. For a person in a state of mania or frenzy, an affliction believed to be caused by an excess of hot, dry, yellow bile, a different treatment was prescribed. They would be immersed in cold water. This was a form of shock therapy, the intense cold intended to douse the fire in their brain, to cool their overheated humours, and to shock them back to a state of calm reason. It was a harsh and often frightening treatment, but it was based on the same humoral logic. Even for those who could not travel to a famous spring, the therapeutic power of water was used. A wealthy lord would have his own wooden bathtub in his castle. A prescription for a troubled mind might involve a warm bath infused with calming herbs like chamomile or lavender. The combination of the warm water and the fragrant therapeutic steam was a powerful tool for relaxation and healing. In the monasteries, ritual bathing was a part of the monastic rule, a symbol of spiritual purity as well as a practical matter of health. A monk suffering from acedia, that spiritual sloth and despair, might be prescribed a regimen of prayer penitence and a series of cleansing baths, the physical washing of the body intended to mirror and encourage the spiritual cleansing of the soul. Let your mind drift and float in the warm, healing waters of a medieval spring. Feel the gentle, supportive embrace of the water, the soothing steam on your face. Hear the quiet, constant gurgle of the spring as it rises from the deep, warm heart of the earth. This is a place of deep, passive relaxation, a place where the body and the mind can let go of their tension, their coldness, their agitation. Allow that sense of profound, warm, liquid peace to envelop you, to dissolve your own worries, and to carry you effortlessly into a deep and healing sleep. The power of pilgrimage. For many of the afflictions of the medieval world, when the remedies of the healer and the physician had failed, there remained one last great hope, a miracle. And the most common way to seek a miracle was to undertake a pilgrimage, a long, arduous and sacred journey to a place where the power of God was believed to be especially present. For the suffering mind, the pilgrimage was a powerful therapy, a spiritual quest that offered healing for the soul, even if it could not cure the body. Let us join a small group of pilgrims on the road. They are from all walks of life, a knight, a merchant, a farmer, a poor widow. Among them is a family, a husband and wife, and their adult daughter. The daughter is the reason for their journey. She is afflicted with what the village calls the falling sickness, what we would call epilepsy. Her seizures are terrifying and unpredictable, and in their world, they are often seen as a sign of demonic possession. They have tried every remedy, and now they have put all their hope in a journey to the shrine of a great saint. Their destination might be the tomb of St. Thomas Becket in Canterbury, the shrine of St. James in Santiago de Compostela in Spain, or a smaller local shrine dedicated to a saint known for healing this particular affliction. The journey itself is an act of deep faith and penance. It can take weeks or even months of walking. The journey is a radical break from the routine of everyday life. For the afflicted person and their family, it is a physical and spiritual removal from the place of their suffering and shame. They leave behind the judgmental eyes of their neighbors, the familiar surroundings that may be filled with painful memories. The road becomes their new home, and their fellow pilgrims become their new community. This community of the road is a powerful force. The normal social hierarchies are relaxed. The knight and the farmer walk side by side, united by their shared purpose and their shared hardships. They tell each other stories, share their food, and offer each other comfort. For the family with the afflicted daughter, this is a profound relief. For the first time, they are surrounded not by fear and suspicion, but by a compassionate community of fellow sufferers and seekers. The journey is physically demanding. They walk from sunrise to sunset, sleeping in crowded pilgrim hostels or in the open air. Their bodies grow weary, their feet become blistered. But this physical hardship is seen as a vital part of the healing process. It is a form of penance, a way of purifying the body and the soul, of showing God and the saint that they are worthy of a miracle. The physical exhaustion can also have a quieting effect on a troubled mind. the simple, repetitive rhythm of walking becoming a kind of moving meditation. As they get closer to the shrine, the spiritual excitement builds. They begin to hear stories from other pilgrims of the miracles that have occurred there. The blind have been made to see, the lame have been made to walk, the mad have been restored to their senses. These stories build an atmosphere of immense hope and expectation. Finally, they arrive. The shrine is a great church, buzzing with a spiritual energy that is almost palpable. They see the crutches and staffs that have been left behind by those who have been healed, hanging on the walls as a testament to the saints' power. The air is thick with the scent of incense and thousands of candles. The family makes their way through the crowd to the heart of the shrine, the tomb of the saint. They fall to their knees. Here, at the end of their long journey, they pour out their hearts in prayer. They touch the cold stone of the tomb, believing that a tangible power, a holy virtue, flows from the sacred bones within. They make an offering, a few precious coins or a small wax model of a human figure, symbolizing their daughter. And what happens next? Sometimes in the intense, emotionally charged atmosphere of the shrine, a seemingly miraculous cure does occur. The daughter may feel a sense of peace she has not felt in years. Her seizures may cease, at least for a time. This would be hailed as a true miracle, her story added to the legends of the shrine. But more often, there is no dramatic cure. The daughter's condition remains unchanged, and yet the pilgrimage is not seen as a failure. The journey itself has been transformative. The family has acted. They have done something. They have placed their suffering at the feet of God and have received the spiritual comfort and communal support of the pilgrimage. They return home with their burden, but their relationship to that burden has changed. They have found a measure of acceptance, of peace, and a renewed sense of faith that allows them to continue their struggle. Let your mind walk with these pilgrims on their long, hopeful journey. Feel the dust of the road, the warmth of the sun, the comfort of companionship. See the light of 1,000 candles reflected in their hopeful eyes as they kneel before the ancient shrine. The pilgrimage is a journey of both the body and the soul, a slow walking prayer for healing and for peace. Let the steady, patient rhythm of their journey guide your own thoughts toward a state of profound and peaceful rest. Part 3. Fear and Punishment. Demonic Possession. In the medieval worldview, the line between the natural and the supernatural was thin and easily crossed. For the medieval mind, the air itself was thick with invisible forces, a battleground between the armies of God and the legions of hell. And the most terrifying evidence of this battle was when it seemed to erupt within a human being. This was the terrifying diagnosis of demonic possession. Demonic possession. Let us return to the case of a person suffering from what we might now call epilepsy, or a severe psychotic episode. Imagine a young man in a village market who suddenly cries out, his body stiffening. He falls to the ground, his limbs thrashing uncontrollably. His eyes roll back in his head, and foam appears on his lips. To the horrified onlookers who gather around, this is not a neurological event. It is a terrifying spectacle of a human soul in the grip of an alien, malevolent entity. The signs they looked for were specific. Unnatural physical strength. The young man, though slender, might seem to possess the power of several men, making him impossible to restrain. Speaking in languages he had never learned, in his delirium he might utter sounds that witnesses interpret as Latin, Greek, or some guttural demonic tongue. Knowledge of secret things, or he might cry out and reveal the hidden sins of the onlookers, things that no one could possibly know. A violent aversion to sacred things, the sight of a crucifix or the sound of a prayer, might send him into a fresh paroxysm of rage and blasphemy. For the medieval observer, these were not symptoms of a disease, they were proof of an invasion. A demon, a fallen angel, a servant of Satan, had entered the man's body. It was using his mouth to speak, his limbs to thrash. The man himself was a prisoner in his own flesh, his soul engaged in a desperate, invisible struggle for control. This diagnosis was a source of profound terror. The possessed individual was a walking embodiment of the power of hell. They were a terrifying anomaly, a tear in the fabric of the created order. Their presence was a spiritual threat to the entire community. The fear was that the demon could, through proximity or contagion, leap to another victim. The cause of the possession was a matter of intense speculation. Had the man invited the demon in through a life of sin and vice? Had he dabbled in witchcraft or made a pact with the devil? Or was he an innocent victim chosen by God to undergo this terrible trial as a test of his faith, a living lesson to the community about the reality of evil? The answer to this question would determine whether the man was viewed with condemnation or with a fearful, compassionate pity. The family of the possessed was plunged into a nightmare. They were dealing not just with a sick relative, but with a supernatural horror in their own home. They would be subject to the demon's terrifying displays, the unnatural voice, the violent outbursts, the chilling, intelligent malice in the eyes of their loved one. And they would face the stigma and fear of their neighbors. The home of a possessed person was often seen as a haunted, contaminated space. The first response would be to turn to the church, the only institution believed to possess the weapons to fight such a spiritual war. The family would send for the local priest, their only hope against an enemy that was more than human. The priest would arrive, his face grim, carrying his book of prayers, a vial of holy water, and a crucifix. He was not coming as a healer, but as a soldier, an exorcist, preparing to do battle for a human soul. Let your mind rest on the edge of this fearful scene. The crowd in the market, their faces a mixture of horror, fascination, and fear. The young man on the ground, his body a battlefield. The world is suddenly filled with a terrifying, malevolent energy. But in this fear there is also a strange kind of certainty. The problem has been identified, the enemy has a name, and there is a prescribed way to fight it. Let the profound, almost theatrical stillness of this moment before the battle begins bring a strange calm to your mind. The chaos has been given a name, and that is the first step toward confronting it. Public exorcisms. When a priest determined that a person was truly possessed by a demon, the battle for their soul would often be a public one. The ritual of exorcism was not a quiet, private affair. It was a dramatic, terrifying, and highly theatrical piece of spiritual warfare, performed in front of the community, a powerful sermon on the reality of hell and the ultimate authority of the church. Let us imagine the scene. The possessed person, perhaps the young man from the market, has been brought, struggling and cursing, into the village church. The heavy wooden doors are shut, but the entire village has gathered outside, pressing in, their faces filled with a mixture of terror and rapt fascination. They can hear the muffled sounds from within. Inside, the church is dimly lit by a few candles. The air is thick with the scent of incense and the cold smell of stone. The possessed man has been restrained, perhaps tied to a pillar, to prevent him from harming himself or others. He is surrounded by the priest and a few brave assistants. The priest is dressed in his sacred vestments, a soldier in the army of God. In his hand, he holds a crucifix, his primary weapon. In the other, a book containing the prescribed prayers of the rite of exorcism. He begins by sprinkling the possessed man and the surrounding area with holy water, a symbolic act of purification. Then, the battle of wills begins. The priest speaks in a loud, commanding voice, not to the man, but to the demon within him. He uses the ancient, powerful language of the Church, Latin. Exorcisamus te, omnis immundus spiritus, he intones. We exorcise you, every unclean spirit. He commands the demon, in the name of Jesus Christ, to reveal its name. In the medieval understanding, to know a demon's name was to gain power over it. The demon, speaking through the man's mouth, might respond with a torrent of blasphemies, insults, and mockery, its voice a deep, unnatural snarl. It might taunt the priest, revealing his secret sins, trying to break his faith and his concentration. The priest holds the crucifix aloft, pressing it against the possessed man's forehead. The touch of the sacred object is believed to be an agony for the demon, and the man might scream and thrash as if burned by fire. The priest continues his prayers, his voice rising in intensity, a relentless barrage of sacred words, calling on the power of the Trinity, the Virgin Mary, and all the saints and archangels to aid him in his fight. This can go on for hours, even days. It is a grueling ordeal of endurance for both the priest and the possessed. The priest must fast and pray, maintaining his spiritual purity and strength. The possessed person, meanwhile, is trapped in the middle of this terrifying spiritual maelstrom, their body pushed to the very limits of its endurance. The onlookers outside listen to the terrifying sounds, the priest's commanding Latin, the demon's horrifying shrieks, the sounds of struggle. It is a visceral, terrifying confirmation of everything they have been taught about the cosmic battle between good and evil. They pray for the priest, for the victim, their own faith strengthened by this direct confrontation with the forces of darkness. The climax of the ritual comes when the demon, worn down by the priest's relentless assault, finally agrees to depart. It might exit the body with a final terrible shriek or with a physical manifestation, a foul smell, a sudden cold wind, or the vomiting of a strange object like a nail or a clump of hair seen as the physical form the demon took inside the body. In the aftermath, the victim collapses, utterly exhausted, drenched in sweat, but seemingly peaceful. The unnatural strength is gone, the wildness has left their eyes. They are themselves again, often with no memory of the ordeal. They are seen as having been rescued, pulled back from the very jaws of hell. The priest, weary but triumphant, leads a prayer of thanks. The church doors are opened, and the exhausted but healed person is presented to the relieved community. A miracle has occurred. The power of God and His church has been demonstrated in the most dramatic way possible. The community's faith is reaffirmed, their fears are calmed, and the cosmic order, for a time, is restored. Let your mind rest in the deep, exhausted silence that follows this spiritual storm. The battle is over. The demon is gone. A profound sense of peace and relief settles over the church. The air, which was thick with terror, now feels clean and calm. Let the quiet victory, the triumph of order over chaos, bring a sense of profound and protected peace to you now. The stocks and the streets. While demonic possession was the most dramatic explanation for madness, not all strange or disruptive behavior was seen in such a supernatural light. Sometimes a person's actions were viewed simply as a public nuisance, a breakdown of social order that needed to be managed in a more worldly and often harsher way. For these individuals, the response was not exorcism, but public restraint and humiliation. Let us visit the central square of a small medieval town. At its heart, near the market cross, stands a familiar and feared piece of public furniture, the stocks. It is a simple, heavy wooden contraption, 2 hinged planks with holes for the ankles and wrists. And today it is occupied. The person confined in the stocks is a man known to the town as a disturber of the peace. He may be what we would now understand as someone suffering from mania. or perhaps from an alcohol-induced psychosis. His behavior has become intolerable to the community. He shouts obscenities at passers-by, gets into pointless brawls, and generally disrupts the quiet, ordered life of the town. After numerous warnings, the town bailiff and his assistants have arrested him. He has been sentenced by the local court not to a long imprisonment. Prisons as we know them are rare, but to a few hours of public humiliation in the stocks. The punishment is as much psychological as it is physical. He is trapped, helpless, in the very center of the community he has disrupted. He is exposed to the elements, the hot sun or the cold rain. His body is held in a cramped, uncomfortable position. But the real punishment is the shame. He is now a public spectacle, an object of scorn and mockery. The townspeople pass by and stare. Some shake their heads in disapproval, others are more cruel. Children, emboldened by the man's helplessness, might throw rotten vegetables or clumps of mud at him. A group of apprentices full of ale from a nearby tavern might taunt him with insults. He is stripped of his dignity, reduced to a helpless object of public derision. The purpose of this punishment is twofold. First, it is meant to chasten the offender, to break his disruptive spirit through public shame. The hope is that the memory of this humiliation will prevent him from causing trouble in the future. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it is a warning to others. The man in the stocks is a living sermon on the importance of conforming to the community's norms. He is an example of what happens when one steps outside the bounds of acceptable behavior. His public punishment reinforces the social order, reminding everyone of the consequences of disruption. Witches and accusations. In the deeply superstitious world of the late Middle Ages, the fear of madness and the fear of witchcraft began to converge, creating a dark and deadly new reality for those who were different. An accusation of witchcraft was one of the most terrifying things that could happen to a person, and strange, unexplained behavior was often seen as the first and most damning piece of evidence. Let us imagine an elderly woman living alone on the outskirts of a village. She is a widow with no children to protect her. She is poor, surviving on what she can forage and on the occasional charity of her neighbors. She is a skilled herbalist, the person the villagers secretly visit for remedies when the priest's prayers have failed. But she is also eccentric. She talks to her cat. She sometimes mutters to herself. She has a sharp tongue and is not afraid to argue with her neighbors over a wandering chicken or a disputed property line. She is, in short, a vulnerable and somewhat disliked figure. One day, a sickness strikes the livestock of a neighboring farmer. A cow that was healthy yesterday is dead this morning. The farmer, looking for someone to blame for his misfortune, remembers a recent argument he had with the old woman. He recalls the angry curse she muttered under her breath as she walked away. The seed of a terrible suspicion is planted. The farmer begins to whisper to his friends at the tavern. The old woman is a witch. She has a pact with the devil. She has used her evil magic to kill his cow. The accusation spreads through the village like a poison. Suddenly, every eccentric thing about the woman is reinterpreted through this dark new lens. Her knowledge of herbs is no longer seen as healing wisdom, but as the secret knowledge of a sorceress. Her muttered conversations with her cat are seen as proof that the animal is her familiar, a demon in disguise. Her social isolation is no longer a sad consequence of her age and poverty. It is a sign that she has rejected the Christian community in favor of the society of devils. The whispers grow into a formal accusation. The woman is dragged from her hut and brought before the local lord or a church official. A trial begins, but this is not a trial based on evidence in the modern sense. It is a trial based on fear, superstition, and a desperate need to find a scapegoat for the community's misfortunes. Her strange behaviors, what we might see as signs of loneliness, eccentricity, or perhaps the onset of dementia, are presented as proof of her guilt. Does she have any unusual marks on her body? A mole or a birthmark is declared to be a witch's teat, where she suckles her demonic familiars. Does she float or sink when thrown into the village pond? The cruel logic of the ordeal by water held that water, being a pure element, would reject a witch, causing her to float. An innocent person would sink, and if they were not pulled out in time, drown. Under the pressure of intense, leading questions, and often under the agony of torture, the old woman's confused and terrified mind might break. She might confess to anything her accusers suggest. Yes, she flew on a broomstick to a midnight Sabbath. Yes, she danced with the devil. Yes, she cursed the farmer's cow. Her confession, extracted under duress from a frightened and possibly senile mind, is seen as the ultimate proof of her guilt. The sentence is preordained. She is condemned as a witch, an enemy of God and of the community. The punishment is death, often by burning at the stake, a terrible public spectacle designed to purify the community of her evil influence and to serve as a terrifying warning to others. This tragic story, which would be repeated thousands of times in the centuries to come, illustrates the profound danger of being different in a world consumed by fear. Mental and social nonconformity could be, and often was, interpreted as supernatural evil. The line between the village eccentric and the condemned witch was terrifyingly thin, and it could be crossed with a single malicious whisper. Let us turn away from the smoke of the pyre. Let us retreat from this world of dark suspicion and terrible, misguided certainty. Let your mind find a place of quiet, rational calm. Feel a deep sense of sorrow for the victims of this fear, for the lonely, the eccentric, the misunderstood, who paid the ultimate price for their difference. Let the peace of your own enlightened age, for all its own anxieties, be a profound comfort. Madness and the law. In a world of curses, demons, and witches, it may be surprising to learn that the medieval legal system sometimes approached the issue of madness with a degree of surprising sophistication and compassion. While the common person might see a madman as possessed or cursed, the law had to grapple with a more practical and complex question. If a person is not in control of their own mind, can they be held responsible for their own actions? Let us imagine a courtroom. It is not the grand wood-panelled room we might picture, but the great hall of a lord's castle. The lord himself, or a judge appointed by the king, sits on a high-backed chair, listening to a difficult case. A man has committed a violent act. He has attacked his neighbour and burned down his barn. The facts of the case are not in dispute. The question before the court is the man's state of mind. The man's family comes forward to testify. They describe his long history of strange and unpredictable behaviour. They tell the court that he has been out of his wits, deprived of his reason for many years. They are not using precise medical terms, but they are painting a clear picture of a man who is not, in their view, a normal, rational being. The court must now make a difficult determination. The legal tradition, inherited in part from Roman law and developed by church canonists, recognized a distinction between a criminal act committed with malice and intent and one committed by a person who lacked the capacity for reason. The concept of non compos mentis, meaning not of sound mind, was a real and important legal category. To determine the man's sanity, the court would not call upon expert psychiatrists. Instead, they would rely on the testimony of the community. They would summon a jury of the man's neighbours, 12 good and lawful men who had known him for years. They would be asked a series of simple, practical questions. Does the accused understand what he has done? Does he know the difference between right and wrong? Can he manage his own daily affairs? Can he count money, recognize his own family, manage his own farm? The questions were designed to build a common-sense picture of the man's mental state. If the jury determined that the man was indeed insane, the law provided a different path than it would for a common criminal. He would likely be found not guilty of a felony because a crime required intent, and a madman was considered incapable of forming that intent. He would be seen not as a criminal, but as a tragic victim of a terrible affliction, an act of God. However, this did not mean he would be set free. The community still had to be protected from his violent outbursts. The court would typically order that he be placed in the custody of his family. His relatives would be made legally responsible for him, required to restrain him, and ensure that he could do no more harm. They would effectively become his jailers, his confinement a private, domestic matter. If he had no family, or if his family was unable to control him, the situation became more difficult. He might be entrusted to the care of the local parish, or he could be confined in a more formal way, perhaps chained in a room in the local castle, his care paid for by the community or by the forfeiture of his own property. This legal framework, for all its crudeness, shows a genuine attempt to grapple with the complexities of mental illness. It recognized that madness could diminish or even erase a person's moral and legal responsibility. It was an island of surprising, practical reason in a sea of supernatural fear. Of course, the system was far from perfect. The tests for insanity were subjective and could be influenced by a family's desire to protect a relative or by a community's fear. And the care provided to the confined was often little more than imprisonment. But the fundamental principle that the insane were not to be judged by the same standards as the sane was a thread of compassion and justice that ran through the heart of the medieval legal world. Let your mind rest on the quiet, deliberate proceedings of this ancient court. Hear the low, serious voices of the witnesses, the thoughtful questions of the judge. It is a scene of reason, of an attempt to apply logic and compassion to a difficult human problem. Let the quiet, ordered process of the law bring a sense of stability and fairness to your mind, a calm and reassuring thought to carry with you into sleep. Part 4. Living with the Afflicted. The Household Burden. Let us return to the heart of the medieval world, the family. For the vast majority of people suffering from a chronic mental affliction, their entire world was the small, smoky hut they shared with their relatives. There were no state-run asylums, no network of mental health professionals. The family was the sole source of care, and the burden of that care was an immense and lifelong weight. Imagine a household where one member, perhaps a grown daughter, is simple-minded, what we might now understand as having a severe developmental disability. She cannot learn the complex tasks of a medieval woman, spinning, weaving, managing a household. She requires constant supervision, like a small child. She is a beloved member of the family, but her presence profoundly changes the family's existence. The burden is, first and foremost, an economic one. In a world where every pair of hands was needed to contribute to the family's survival, a non-productive member was a significant drain on resources. The food she ate, the clothes she wore, all had to be provided by the labor of her parents and siblings. Her presence might mean the difference between having just enough to eat and falling into deep poverty. The burden was also intensely physical. Her mother would be responsible for her daily care, feeding her, washing her, tending to her needs. If the afflicted person was prone to wandering, a family member would always have to be watching. If they were physically strong but mentally unstable, there was the constant, exhausting work of managing their behavior, of trying to prevent them from harming themselves or others. And the emotional burden was perhaps the heaviest of all. The family would be living with a constant, low-level grief for the healthy, normal child they did not have. There was the endless worry about what would happen to their daughter after they, her parents, were gone. Who would care for her then? There was the social shame and isolation, the feeling of being set apart from the other families in the village. And yet, within these immense challenges, there was often a deep and powerful bond of love and duty. The family's Catholic faith taught them that caring for the weak and the helpless was a sacred obligation, a path to salvation. Their afflicted daughter was not just a burden, she was their cross to bear, a soul entrusted to them by God. The family would develop its own private routines, its own language of gestures and sounds to communicate with their non-verbal daughter. Her siblings would learn to be her protectors, shielding her from the teasing of other village children. She would have her own small, simple tasks to perform around the hut, fetching water perhaps, or feeding the chickens, tasks that gave her a sense of purpose and belonging. The family unit would be shaped around the reality of her condition. It would be a world of immense patience, of quiet endurance, of a love that was defined not by grand gestures but by the endless, repetitive, and often thankless tasks of daily care. Let your mind rest in the quiet domestic space of this humble family. See the mother patiently guiding her daughter's hand as she tries to perform a simple task. See the father, his face weary but gentle as he speaks a soft word to her. This is not a story of dramatic cures or terrifying exorcisms. It is the much more common and much quieter story of a family simply coping day after day, year after year, with a challenge they did not choose. It is a story of profound, unheralded love and resilience. Let the deep, quiet strength of this family's bond bring a sense of profound peace and comfort to you. Charitable hospitals. While the family was the primary caregiver for the afflicted, by the later Middle Ages, a new type of institution began to appear in the growing towns and cities. These were the first hospitals, and they were not primarily places of medicine, but of charity. Born from the Christian duty to care for the poor and the sick, they offered a rudimentary safety net for those who had no one else. Let us visit one such institution. It might be called the Hospital of St. Giles or the Domus Dei, the House of God. It is usually located just outside the city walls, a long, low stone building with a chapel attached. It was founded and funded by a wealthy merchant, a noble, or a guild, as an act of piety, a way to gain favor with God and to ensure prayers would be said for their soul after their death. Inside we find a large, open ward like the nave of a church. It is a long hall with a high, timbered roof. Along each wall is a row of simple wooden beds, each with a straw mattress and a rough woolen blanket. The air is cool and smells of unwashed bodies, of sickness, and of the herbal infusions that are used to try and keep the air clean. The residents of the hospital are a diverse and desperate group. They are the absolute poorest of the poor. There are the elderly, too frail to work, with no family to care for them. There are the chronically ill, suffering from leprosy, from crippling arthritis, from festering sores. There are orphans, and among them there are always a few who are there because of a troubled mind. These are the people whose families could not or would not care for them. They are the wandering outcasts who have finally found a place of refuge. Here they are at least guaranteed the basics of survival: a roof over their head, a simple, meagre meal each day, usually bread, and a thin pottage, and a degree of safety from the harshness of the outside world. The care provided is not medical in our sense. It is primarily custodial and spiritual. The hospital is run by a small community of monks or nuns, or by a lay brotherhood or sisterhood. Their primary duty is to ensure the spiritual well-being of the residents. They lead them in daily prayers. They ensure that a priest is available to hear confessions and administer the last rites. The healing of the soul is seen as far more important than the healing of the body or the mind. For the mentally afflicted, there is no specific treatment. There are no doctors, no therapists, but the hospital does offer a kind of passive therapy. Like the monastery, it provides a structured, predictable routine, a safe and ordered environment that can be calming for a troubled mind. The residents are removed from the stresses and dangers of life on the streets. However, life in the hospital is not easy. The wards are crowded and noisy. Privacy is non-existent. The rules are strict, and discipline is enforced. For those suffering from more severe or disruptive mental conditions, the hospital could be a prison as much as a sanctuary. If a resident became violent or unmanageable, they would be restrained, perhaps chained to their bed, for the safety of the other residents. And yet these charitable institutions represent a significant step forward. They are the first formal societal recognition that the community has a collective responsibility to care for its most vulnerable members, including those with troubled minds. They are a testament to the medieval ideal of caritas, of Christian love and charity. They are the distant, humble ancestors of our modern systems of social welfare and public health care. Let your mind rest in the long, quiet ward of this medieval hospital. See the rows of beds, the still forms of the residents. Hear the soft, shuffling footsteps of a nun as she moves from bed to bed, offering a cup of water, a quiet word of comfort. It is a place of immense sadness and suffering, but it is also a place of profound compassion. It is a small light of organized kindness in a dark and often brutal world. Let the quiet, charitable peace of this place bring a sense of comfort and security to you, chains and confinement. We must now turn our gaze to the darkest and most disturbing aspect of how the medieval world dealt with mental affliction. When all other options had failed, when a person's madness was deemed too violent, too disruptive, or too dangerous to be managed by family or charitable hospital, the final solution was often one of brutal, long-term confinement. This was the grim reality of chains and the locked room. Let us imagine a place that exists on the very fringes of society. It might be a small stone-built cell in the undercroft of a castle, a specially built strong room in a hospital, or even just a fortified shed at the back of a family's property. The room is small, dark and bare. There is no furniture, only a pile of straw on the floor. The single, small window is high up on the wall, barred with iron. The heavy wooden door is reinforced and bolted from the outside. Inside this cell lives a human being. This is a person whose madness has been judged to be incurable and dangerous. They are here for the protection of society, and perhaps it was argued for their own protection. They have been removed from the world, their existence reduced to the four walls of this small, dark space. The conditions are grim. The cell is cold, damp, and filthy. The person lives in their own waste. They are fed through a small slot in the door, a bowl of pottage and a piece of bread pushed through once a day. They have no human contact, save for the brief, fearful appearance of their keeper. They are treated not as a sick person, but as a wild, untamable animal. And often they are physically restrained. Iron manacles might be bolted to the wall, their chains just long enough to allow the person to stand or lie down. These chains are a permanent fixture, a constant heavy weight on the wrists and ankles. They are a brutal, physical symbol of the person's loss of freedom, of reason, of their very humanity. Who were the people who ended up in these terrible places? They were the most extreme cases, the people whose behavior was so violent and unpredictable that their families and communities simply could not cope. They were seen as having crossed a line, as having been so completely overcome by their madness that they were no longer truly human. The theological explanation was often that the demon that possessed them had won the battle, and that their soul was, for all intents and purposes, lost. This practice of chaining the insane was not born of pure sadism. It was born of fear and a profound sense of helplessness. In a world with no understanding of the causes of severe mental illness and no effective treatments, restraint seemed like the only logical, practical solution. It was a brutal answer to a terrifying problem. One of the most famous examples of such a place was the Bethlehem Hospital in London, which by the late Middle Ages had begun to specialize in the care of the insane. Its name, corrupted over time to Bedlam, would become a synonym for chaos and madness. For a fee, the public could come and stare at the inmates in their cells, their bizarre and tragic behavior a source of morbid entertainment. The residents of Bedlam were one of the sights of the city, their suffering turned into a public spectacle. Let us retreat from this dark and sorrowful place. Let us leave the chained figure in the cold, dim light of their cell. Let your mind turn away from this image of profound hopelessness and despair. Feel a deep sense of compassion for those who suffered this terrible fate and a sense of profound gratitude for the progress of human understanding and empathy. Let the peace and freedom of your own comfortable, safe surroundings be a source of deep and profound comfort. The chains are gone, the darkness has lifted, you are safe, you are free. The village fool. Not all who were considered mad in the medieval world were chained or hidden away. In the complex social ecosystem of the village, there was a specific and peculiar niche for a certain kind of afflicted person, the role of the village fool, or natural. This was a person who was clearly different, who did not fit the normal patterns of thought and behavior, but who was seen as harmless and was therefore tolerated and sometimes even embraced by the community. Let us imagine such a character. He might be a man with a significant developmental disability, or perhaps someone with a gentle, non-threatening form of schizophrenia. He is known to everyone in the village simply by a nickname like Simple Tom or Daft Will. He does not work in the fields or practice a trade. He exists on the charity of the community, wandering from door to door, where he is given scraps of food, a cup of ale, an old patched tunic. His behavior is eccentric. He might spend his days having long, animated conversations with a tree. He might wear a strange collection of feathers and rags in his hair. He might have a habit of speaking in rhymes or of blurting out strange, disconnected truths. He is, in a sense, a permanent child, and the village adopts a collective, if sometimes condescending, parental role. The village fool occupied a unique and ambiguous social position. On the one hand, he was an object of mockery and the butt of children's jokes. On the other, he was often seen as being under the special protection of God. His simplicity was interpreted as a form of innocence. Because he was free from the normal adult concerns of pride, greed, and ambition, he was seen as being, in a way, closer to heaven. To harm or mistreat the village fool was considered a terrible sin, one that would surely bring bad luck. This gave him a strange kind of freedom. He was the one person in the village who was exempt from the strict rules of social decorum. He could say things to the priest or the lord of the manor that no one else would dare to say. His strange, nonsensical pronouncements were sometimes interpreted as a form of homespun wisdom or even prophecy. He was a licensed truth-teller, his madness giving him a license to speak freely. He was a jester without a king, his court the entire village. He was a familiar and accepted part of the village landscape. His presence served a social function. He was a living reminder of the fragility of the human mind, a walking embodiment of the fine line between reason and madness. His dependence on the community's charity was a constant opportunity for the villagers to practice the Christian virtue of giving alms to the poor and the helpless. He was a part of the community's identity. The villagers would tell stories about his latest strange antic. He was our fool, a figure of a certain affectionate if patronizing pride. This tolerance, however, had its limits. It was extended only as long as the fool remained harmless. If his behavior ever turned aggressive or threatening, the community's attitude could shift with terrifying speed. The beloved eccentric fool could quickly become the dangerous madman, and the protection he once enjoyed would vanish, to be replaced by the harsh reality of chains and confinement. But for many, the role of the village fool was a viable, if precarious, way of life. It was a social adaptation, a way for a community to integrate a person who did not fit without resorting to the extremes of either total exclusion or constant care. He was a permanent outsider on the inside, a living paradox, both a part of the village and forever separate from it. Let your mind rest on this gentle, eccentric figure. See him sitting in the sun in the village square, a strange smile on his face, weaving a garland of weeds. He is at peace, untroubled by the complex worries of the world around him. Let the simplicity and innocence of the village fool bring a sense of gentle, uncomplicated peace to your own mind. Coping in silence. We have explored the dramatic and the extreme, the exorcisms, the chains, the public spectacles. But for the vast majority of people in the medieval world who suffered from what we would now call mental health issues, anxiety, chronic depression, post-traumatic stress, their experience was a much quieter, more internal, and more hidden one. Theirs was a story of coping in silence, of quiet endurance in a world that had no language for their pain. Let us imagine a woman, a farmer's wife, a mother of 4. Her life is one of unceasing, repetitive labor, from before sunrise to after sunset. She is also living with a constant, low-level hum of anxiety, a fretfulness of the spirit. She worries constantly about the weather, about the harvest, about her children's health, about the state of her own soul. Some nights she lies awake for hours, her heart pounding, her mind racing with a cascade of nameless fears. She has no one to talk to about this. There is no concept of therapy, no understanding of anxiety as a treatable condition. Her feelings are seen as a personal failing, a lack of faith, a weakness of character. To complain would be to risk being seen as lazy or impious or simply ungrateful for her lot in life, and so she keeps her suffering to herself. It is a secret, inner burden that she carries with her through the long days of work. How does she cope? She leans on the structures of her world, the rituals and beliefs that provide a sense of order and meaning in the face of her inner chaos. Her first and most powerful coping mechanism is her faith. She prays. Her prayers are not the formal Latin of the Church, but quiet, desperate, whispered conversations with God and the saints. She might have a particular saint, Saint Dymphna, the patron saint of the mentally afflicted, to whom she feels a special connection. She finds comfort in the ritual of the Mass, the familiar words and gestures, a soothing balm for her troubled mind. The church is a place where she can lay down her burden, at least for a little while. She also copes through ritual. She might have a series of small, private rituals that help her to manage her anxiety. She might make the sign of the cross over the doorway every time she leaves her hut. She might carry a small, smooth stone in her pocket, a kind of amulet that she rubs when her fears begin to overwhelm her. These small, repetitive actions provide a sense of control, a way of imposing a small piece of order on a world that feels threatening and unpredictable. She copes through her work. The endless physical demands of her life are a kind of therapy. There is no time for idle introspection when the cow needs milking, the bread needs baking, and the children need feeding. The sheer physical exhaustion at the end of the day is its own kind of medicine, often bringing a heavy, dreamless sleep that offers a temporary escape from her worries. And she copes through sheer endurance. She has been taught from birth that life is hard, that suffering is a normal and expected part of the human condition. Her faith tells her that this life is a pilgrimage, a time of trial, and that her true reward is not in this world, but in the next. This belief provides a powerful framework for her suffering. It does not take the pain away, but it gives it meaning. Her silent struggle is a form of spiritual martyrdom, a cross that she bears with a quiet, grim determination. This is the untold story of mental health in the medieval world. It is the story of the countless ordinary people who lived with anxiety, with grief, with melancholy, and who had no name for their pain, no one to tell, and no hope of a cure. Their lives were a testament to the quiet, unheralded strength of the human spirit, its remarkable capacity to endure, to find meaning, and to keep going day after day in the face of a silent and invisible suffering. Let your mind rest in the quiet, stoic dignity of this woman. Feel the weight of her unspoken worries, but also the deep, quiet strength of her endurance. Let her silent, patient coping be an inspiration for a deep and profound peace in your own mind. Part 5. Nightfall and Reflection. Night Terrors. As darkness falls over the medieval world, a different kind of reality takes hold. The day is the realm of reason, of work, of the visible world. The night is the realm of the supernatural, of the unseen, of the terrors that lurk in the shadows of the mind. And for the medieval person, sleep was not always a peaceful refuge. It could be a terrifying landscape, a place where the soul was vulnerable to assault from the demonic world. Let us enter a sleeping chamber in the dead of night. It might be the curtained bed of a wealthy merchant, or the simple straw pallet of a peasant. All is still and quiet. And then the silence is shattered by a blood-curdling scream. A person sits bolt upright in their bed, their eyes wide with a terror that is not of this world. They are in the grip of a night terror. To the person experiencing it, the terror is utterly real. They may feel a crushing weight on their chest, as if a great, heavy creature is sitting on them, suffocating them. They may see a terrifying figure in the shadows of the room, a grinning demon, a skeletal spectre, the leering face of a goblin. These are not dreams that can be shaken off upon waking. They are vivid, multi-sensory assaults that leave the heart pounding and the body drenched in a cold sweat. How was this experience understood? In medieval folklore, the primary culprit was a malevolent spirit known as the mare, from which we get the word nightmare. The mare was a creature, often female, that was believed to ride on the chests of sleepers, oppressing them, stealing their breath, and tormenting them with terrifying visions. Another common explanation was the incubus or the succubus, male and female demons that were believed to prey upon humans in their sleep, seducing them or assaulting them, stealing their vital energy and endangering their immortal souls. A person who suffered from repeated, vivid and terrifying nightmares might be suspected of being targeted by such a demon, perhaps as a result of a sinful life or a weak faith. These were not just folk tales, they were serious theological concerns. Learned churchmen wrote treatises on how to distinguish between a normal, medically induced bad dream, perhaps caused by an imbalance of the humours from eating a heavy meal before bed, and a genuine demonic assault. The experience of a night terror was deeply isolating. The sufferer would wake, trembling and terrified, but the other people in the room would have seen nothing. The terrifying figure, the crushing weight, it was real only to them. This could lead to a profound sense of fear and shame. Was something wrong with them? Were they being singled out by the forces of darkness? They would be afraid to go back to sleep. The bed no longer a place of rest, but a potential torture chamber. The defenses against these nocturnal assaults were primarily spiritual. A person plagued by night terrors would be advised to strengthen their faith. They would be told to say extra prayers before bed, to sprinkle their bed and their room with holy water. They would be encouraged to sleep with a sacred object under their pillow, a crucifix, a rosary, or a small bag containing a holy relic. The very position in which one slept was considered important. It was believed that sleeping on one's back made one particularly vulnerable to the mare, and people were advised to sleep on their side. The content of one's thoughts before sleep was also crucial. To go to sleep with a mind full of angry, lustful, or impious thoughts was to issue an open invitation to the demons of the night. Let your mind drift into the deep, dark quiet of the medieval night. Imagine the profound silence, the flickering shadows cast by a dying fire, the absolute blackness outside the unglazed window. It is a world where the boundary between sleep and the supernatural is thin and easily breached. Feel a sense of compassion for the person who wakes screaming from a terror that is, to them, utterly real. And then feel a sense of profound safety and peace in your own quiet, protected bedroom. The shadows in your room hold no menace. Your sleep is a safe harbor. Allow that feeling of deep, modern security to be a comforting lullaby, carrying you into a peaceful and dreamless rest. Holy relics. In a world where the boundary between the physical and the spiritual was so porous, the most powerful medicine for a troubled mind was often a physical object, a tangible piece of holiness that could be seen, touched, and held. This was the world of holy relics, the physical remains of saints or objects associated with them, and their power to bring peace to the afflicted was a cornerstone of medieval faith. Let us return to the side of a person suffering from a deep and inconsolable melancholy, or perhaps from the terrifying visions of a tormented mind. The prayers of the priest have been said, the herbal remedies of the healer have been tried, but the suffering continues. Now the family turns to its most precious and powerful spiritual tool. It is a small object kept carefully wrapped in a piece of clean linen and stored in a locked wooden box. It might be a tiny sliver of bone, said to be from the finger of an apostle. It could be a thread from the robe of a famous saint, or a splinter of wood believed to be from the true cross. This is the family's personal relic, perhaps acquired at great cost during a pilgrimage, or passed down as a priceless heirloom. With great reverence, the object is unwrapped. The family gathers around the bed of the sufferer. They pray, asking the saint associated with the relic to intercede with God on their behalf. Then the relic is gently pressed against the forehead or the chest of the afflicted person. The belief is that a divine power, a holy virtues, resides within the physical object itself. This power is a direct conduit to the saint in heaven. The touch of the relic is believed to be a physical channel through which the saint's healing grace can flow into the body and soul of the sufferer. It is a power that can drive out the demon of madness, cool the fever of a frantic mind, and pour the balm of divine peace into a heart filled with despair. The afflicted person, who has been taught from birth to believe in the power of these objects, experiences the touch of the relic as a profound and tangible event. The cold smoothness of a reliquary, the rough texture of an ancient piece of cloth, these sensory experiences are a powerful focus for their faith and their hope. In this moment, they are not just passively suffering, they are actively participating in a sacred and hopeful ritual. This belief in the power of touch extended beyond the major relics. The simple act of touching the stone tomb of a saint was believed to be healing. Water that had been used to wash the altar of a church, or dust that had been swept from the floor of a shrine, was collected and treasured, believed to have absorbed some of the holiness of the place. Amulets were also commonly worn. A person suffering from anxiety might wear a small metal badge purchased at a pilgrim shrine, sewn into their clothes, or they might wear a tiny scroll of parchment on which a prayer or a passage from the Gospels had been written, sealed in a small leather pouch and worn around the neck. These were not just symbols, they were believed to be active, spiritual shields, constantly warding off evil spirits and bad thoughts. The world was a place of powerful, tangible holiness, and these small, sacred objects were the access points to that power. They were the physical anchors for a faith that was struggling against the overwhelming tides of fear, suffering, and uncertainty. Let your mind rest on the quiet, reverent atmosphere of this scene. The family gathered in the dim light, their faces filled with hope. The small, ancient object, a point of intense focus and faith. The gentle, hopeful act of touching the relic to the sufferer's skin. There is a deep, profound peace in the simple, tangible nature of this faith. It is a belief you can hold in your hand. Let the quiet, concentrated power of this sacred object bring a sense of profound calm and protection to your own mind. You are safe, you are guarded, all is well. The candle at midnight. In the long, dark, and often fearful nights of the Middle Ages, light was more than just a convenience. It was a shield, a comfort, a powerful symbol of safety and of the divine. And in a room where a person was struggling with a troubled mind, the simple, steady flame of a single candle could be a vital part of their care, a silent, watchful guardian through the darkest hours. Let us imagine a chamber at midnight. Outside, the world is plunged in an absolute, impenetrable blackness, a stark contrast to our modern world of streetlights and ambient glow. The night is a time of vulnerability, when the forces of darkness, both real and imagined, are believed to hold sway. Inside the room, a person is lying awake, their mind tormented by anxious thoughts, by melancholic despair, or by the lingering fear of a recent night terror. They are not left in total darkness. On a small table by their bed, a single candle burns. It is likely a tallow candle made from animal fat, and it gives off a dim, yellowish light and a faint, greasy smell. It sputters and flickers with every small draught, its flame a living, breathing presence in the stillness of the room. This small, fragile flame is a powerful tool against the terrors of the night. On a practical level, it pushes back the physical darkness, preventing the shadows in the corners of the room from playing tricks on a fearful mind. The familiar shapes of the room, a wooden chest, a hanging cloak, are visible, reassuringly solid, preventing the imagination from populating the darkness with monstrous forms. But the candle's power is primarily symbolic and spiritual. In Christian thought, light is the ultimate symbol of God, of Christ as the light of the world. Darkness is the symbol of evil, of sin, of the domain of Satan. To keep a candle burning through the night is a constant, silent prayer, a physical manifestation of faith in the face of the encroaching darkness. It is a small, defiant beacon of holiness, holding the demonic forces of the night at bay. The candle is a focus for the troubled mind. The anxious person can watch the steady, hypnotic dance of the flame, its gentle, constant motion, a soothing anchor for their racing thoughts. The candle becomes a companion in their lonely vigil, a silent witness to their suffering. The practice of keeping a light burning for the sick or the troubled was common. A family would ensure that the candle by their afflicted relative's bed never went out. It was an act of care, a way of watching over them even when the rest of the household was asleep. In monasteries, a special candle, the sanctuary lamp, was kept burning at all times before the altar, a symbol of the constant, watchful presence of Christ. The small candle in the sick room was a domestic echo of this sacred practice. The type of candle could also be significant. While tallow was common, a beeswax candle was a luxury, prized for its brighter, cleaner light and its sweet, pleasant smell. Beeswax was considered a purer substance, the product of virgin bees, and was therefore the preferred material for church candles. To burn a beeswax candle for a sick person was an act of special devotion, a more potent and expensive form of spiritual protection. Let your mind focus on this single, small flame. See its warm, golden light pushing back the immense, cold darkness of the medieval night. See the soft, gentle way it illuminates the face of the watcher, the still form of the sleeper. The flame is small, fragile, and temporary. It will eventually burn down, but for now, in this moment, it is enough. It is a symbol of hope, of faith, and of the enduring human need for a small circle of light in the vast darkness. Let the gentle, steady, and unwavering light of this single candle bring a profound sense of peace, safety, and comfort to your own mind, a quiet beacon to guide you into a deep and untroubled rest. The Whispered Prayer. We are at the deepest point of the night, the hour before the dawn, when the world is at its quietest and the veil between the worlds is at its thinnest. It is a time for profound fear, but also for profound intimacy with the divine. In the stillness of 1,000 darkened rooms across the medieval world, a quiet, rustling sound can be heard. It is the sound of the whispered prayer, the last, most personal, and most desperate tool for the afflicted soul. Let us listen in the darkness of a small hut. A mother is kneeling by the straw pallet where her child lies, tossing and crying out in a feverish, troubled sleep. The mother has done everything she can. She has given the child the herbal remedies from the healer. She has kept a candle burning. She has pressed the family's small relic to the child's forehead. Now, there is nothing left to do but pray. Her prayer is not loud or formal. It is a soft, urgent, continuous whisper, a stream of words flowing from the deepest well of her heart. She is not reciting from a book. She is speaking directly, intimately to the figures who populate her spiritual world. She speaks to God the Father, the great, powerful, and sometimes fearsome judge. She begs him for mercy, confessing her own sins, offering to perform any penance if only her child will be spared. Her prayer is a bargain, a negotiation, a plea from a powerless subject to an all-powerful king. Then her tone softens. She turns her prayer to Jesus, the Son, the figure of compassion and suffering. She reminds him of his own suffering on the cross, of his love for the weak and the helpless. She speaks to him not as a king, but as a brother, a fellow sufferer who can understand her pain. And then, most intimately of all, she speaks to Mary, the Holy Mother. This is the prayer of one mother to another. She speaks to Mary of the terror of watching a child suffer, of the profound, helpless love that wrings her heart. She asks Mary to go to her son, to intercede on their behalf, to use her motherly influence to win them a miracle. The Virgin Mary is the great, compassionate heart of the medieval spiritual world, the ultimate refuge for the suffering. The Mother's whispered litany might also include the names of saints, a whole army of spiritual allies. She calls on St. Nicholas, the protector of children. She calls on St. Christopher to help her child on their difficult journey through the night. She calls on the local saint of her own village, a figure who feels close, familiar, a neighbor in heaven. Her prayer is a physical act. She is kneeling on the cold, hard earth. Her hands are tightly clasped, her knuckles white. Tears stream down her face, unseen in the darkness. Her body rocks back and forth with the rhythm of her whispered words. This quiet, desperate, and intensely personal prayer is the ultimate coping mechanism in a world of profound uncertainty. It is an act of profound hope in the face of utter helplessness. The mother cannot control the fever. She cannot fight the demons she believes are tormenting her child's sleep, but she can pray. It is the one action she can take, the one thread of agency she has, and in the act of praying she is not alone. She is connecting herself and her child to a vast, invisible network of divine love and power. She is wrapping her child in a protective blanket of sacred names and holy words. The prayer does not just rise up to heaven, it brings a sense of heaven's presence down into the small, dark, fearful room. Let the soft, gentle, rustling sound of this whispered prayer be a soothing lullaby. Hear the love, the fear, and the profound faith in the mother's voice. Feel the deep, quiet intimacy of this conversation with the unseen world. There is a profound and comforting peace in this act of surrender, in this placing of one's deepest fears into the hands of a trusted and loving power. Let that sense of profound, prayerful peace settle over you, a gentle, protective whisper that quiets your own fears and carries you into a deep and blessed sleep. Dawn and endurance. The first faint grey light of dawn begins to seep into the world, diluting the deep black of the night. The rooster in the village crows, its call a defiant cry against the darkness. A new day is beginning. For the people of the medieval world, the arrival of the dawn is more than just the start of a new day. It is a small, daily miracle, a victory of light over darkness, of life over the terrors of the night. Let us return one last time to the rooms of the afflicted, to the people we have visited on our journey through the medieval mind. In his chamber, the melancholic scholar opens his heavy eyelids. The terrible, formless anxieties of the night recede with the shadows. The cold, dry weight in his soul is still there, but in the clear, honest light of day, it feels a little more manageable. He has survived another night. Now there is the simple, structured reality of the day to be faced, the call to prayer, the work in the library, the midday meal. The routine is a lifeline, a scaffold that will support him through the long hours until the next night falls. He rises from his bed, his movements slow and deliberate, and begins the quiet, arduous work of enduring another day. In her hut, the mother who has been praying all night for her sick child sees in the first light that the child's fever has broken. The tossing and crying have stopped. The child is sleeping peacefully, a light sheen of sweat on their brow. The mother's heart is flooded with a relief so profound it feels like a physical wave. Her prayers have been answered. The coming of the dawn has brought with it the gift of healing. In the village, the family with the troubled son unbars the door. They have made it through another night without a violent outburst. The son is calm this morning, sitting quietly by the hearth. There is no cure, there is no solution, but there is a temporary peace. The family will take this peace as a gift, a small respite in their long struggle. They will carry the burden of their love and their fear with them into the new day. The dawn does not bring a magical end to suffering. The anxieties, the delusions, the deep, abiding sadness, these things do not vanish with the morning mist, but the light of day brings a shift in perspective. The world is made real again. There is work to be done, bread to be earned, a life to be lived. The focus moves from the terrifying internal world of the mind to the solid, tangible world of physical reality. This daily rhythm of night and day, of fear and endurance, is the fundamental reality for those living with mental affliction in this age. There are no easy answers, no quick cures. There is only the slow, patient, an incredibly resilient process of coping. They endure through faith, through ritual, through the support of family, through the simple, grounding demands of their daily labor. Their lives are a testament to a quiet, often invisible form of heroism. It is the heroism of simply getting out of bed in the morning when your soul is weighed down with a leaden sadness. It is the heroism of caring for a loved one whose mind has become a strange and frightening country. It is the heroism of holding on to faith in a world that often seems filled with nothing but suffering and fear. As the sun climbs higher, its warm, golden light spreads across the landscape, illuminating the church tower, the thatched roofs of the village, the green of the fields. A new day has begun, with all its challenges, its sorrows, and its small, fleeting moments of grace. The long, dark night of the mind has been survived. And in that survival, in that simple, profound act of endurance, there is a deep and quiet victory. Let the image of this new dawn fill your mind. Feel the warmth of the first sunlight on your face. Hear the world waking up, the sounds of life beginning anew. Let the promise of a new day, a fresh start, bring a sense of profound and gentle peace to your own heart. The night is over. The darkness has passed. And now, in the quiet, hopeful light of a new day, you can let go and find rest.